in Massachusetts, a lot of people have questions about what some of the options are with DCF in terms of temporary custody, permanent custody, termination of parental rights, guardianships. And it's important to understand before agreeing to anything or whatever strategy that you're going to go with your lawyer about what different options mean. So for example, in care and protection cases with DCF, permanent custody does not necessarily mean that your parental rights are terminated. If there's not a clause talking about termination of parental rights, what permanent custody basically means is that DCF has custody for 6 months. You would have to file something called a review and redetermination to get custody back because of a change in circumstance. It doesn't automatically end after 6 months, but your parental rights aren't terminated and you do have options to get custody back. On the other hand, with termination of parental rights, unless there's an open adoption agreement, that does terminate your parental rights forever and you cannot go back to court to readdress that after your appeals piece has ended. Temporary custody is something, if you give up your right to a 72-hour hearing or you have a 72-hour hearing and lose, the department would generally have temporary custody, meaning that it's not permanent and that there will be a trial to determine who has permanent custody and whether or not there should be termination of parental rights. Guardianships in juvenile court, a lot of times nowadays there's a presumption that DCF is going to look to try and terminate your parental rights and have a guardianship with a termination of parental rights. However, that's not something that needs to occur. In probate court, it very rarely occurs that a guardianship would have a termination of parental rights. So it's important to understand the different phrases and what they mean and the different options. So if it's a guardianship without a termination of parental rights, you would have the right generally to have that guardianship vacated. Again, it depends on the terms and the specifics, but generally after 6 months, again, if there's a change in circumstance, you can have that readdressed. If there's a guardianship with a termination of parental rights, that would end your ability to vacate the guardianship, even if there's a reason to do so for the parent or the person that has had their parental rights terminated.